I won't go through this in detail. Suffice it to say, a huge range of work, a lot of it to reduce barriers, which I did actually achieve. We removed the regulatory barriers to decentralised energy. That became law in April last year. So it just goes to show you high-level advocacy at the right place, representing a big city. National and state governments sit up and listen. Also had to do projects as well at the same time, so a range of projects. Probably the biggest one there was the establishment of the London ESCO, public-private joint venture company between the London Climate Change Agency and EDF Energy. That was put out to competitive tender, and so we essentially procured a private sector partner for a public-private joint venture company, of which we would be a minority shareholder. Had 9 major utilities and energy companies bid for that, including 2 international oil companies and 1 large American ESCO. Anyway, the French company, EDF Energy, won that, and we established the London ESCO with them. We also established the framework around the C20, which eventually led to the C40. So I'll talk about the C40 a bit later on. In London, decentralised energy systems, again, like working. Much bigger systems, probably well-known places like the Natural History Museum has Trigen. And Argentine. We've also got large-scale onshore wind farms in East London. Wind turbines by rivers is very good. You get additional wind speed coming off that. Similarly with coastal stuff as well. A little project called the Olympics. That was part of our bid. I wrote the technical part of that bid, which won was selected. And that had, as a minimum, tri-generation throughout the site. 2 big decentralised energy systems. It's a very large park. 20% renewable energy, 45% reduction in water, and so on. So there's a whole range of environmental and sustainability measures that were embedded in the Olympics from the start. Part of the contract, nobody could wriggle out of it, and that work is currently being constructed as we speak. Our planning policies on renewable energy was interesting because we were challenged on the increasing renewables from 10 to 20%, so we had a public inquiry, but we were able to produce the following evidence from London South Bank University, and we were able to show that as far as the 10% policy was concerned, a significant number of new developments were achieving that, readily achieving that. 25% of developments actually achieved more than 10%, and 8% actually achieved more than 20%. So the 10% energy target, renewable energy target, was being met on average by 2005, and that was in a space of 1 year. So we increased that to 20%, so that's what it is at the moment. The 10% policy delivered a 26% reduction in CO2 emissions on new development collectively. On existing commercial build, again, it was a big area we had to tackle because these are buildings that are outside our control, so you have to use advocacy to do this. We established the Better Buildings Partnership. The concept was originally established by Toronto in Canada, and we reasoned that with the huge number of businesses that there are in London, we established that something like 12 of them owned more than 50% of the stock, about 60%. So we targeted those 12 businesses, and we got all of them, and we established the Better Buildings Partnership as a company limited by guarantee, and we're going through a similar approach here in Sydney for that. The London ESCO, very similar structure to the Woking thing, so that was a model that worked. People ask me why 19%? Well, projects are normally developed by 20% equity, 80% loan finance, so what you really got is 19% or 20%, which is 3.8%. And projects are typically financed between an 8 to 10% project fee, and 50% share of the project fee is 4%, so our 3.8% always fell below 4%. So the local authority could always invest in bigger projects, as big as you like. It created a sustainable financing mechanism. Should use it over here. We got the electricity licensing arrangements changed, so in the UK now, you can now use the public wire, so you no longer need to use private wire, if providing you are generating and distributing and supplying electricity on the distribution network, not across the grid. Most of the costs for a small player it can literally cost you millions of dollars just to set up to trade electricity across the grid. And that's why you only get a handful of very big companies doing that. But at the decentralised energy end, we just simply made a modification change there, and that became law, as I said, last April. So decentralised energy payers can pay their $1,500 or whatever to get a supply licence on the distribution network and do what I did in Woking without putting the cables in. Okay, well, the success of the London model, these show you where we have decentralised energy. That is already up and running, which is this blue stuff. What's marked as certain is under construction, so number 22, for example, is the Olympic Park, and the orange is what's been consented, so that will be built. Outer London, on the far left there, that's Heathrow Airport, so we've managed for the first time to make inroads into Heathrow Airport, so can't necessarily stop the emissions from aircraft, but we can certainly stop it on the ground by capturing them with the London plan. The summary of that, within a few years, we have delivered by 2008 205 megawatts of decentralised energy, 63 megawatts currently under construction, some of that will be complete now, 349 megawatts consented, leaving London to deliver the remaining 583 megawatts to get to that 1200 megawatt target. Kind of makes the City of Sydney target of 330 relatively small in comparison to what was delivered in London. As I said before, London acting on its own, great stuff, it will reduce these emissions and all the rest of it, but it still only represents a relatively tiny fraction of worldwide CO2 emissions, so how do you reduce that? We figured that if we got the world's biggest cities to come together and to do what we were doing in London, originally started out as a C20, but we then were approached by other large cities, and that got extended to the C40. In Australia, Sydney and Melbourne are the C40 cities, so they're the two big players in what's regarded as world cities. This is what some of the leaders of that are doing. As you see, Sydney's up there, not because it's necessarily achieved very much, but it's committed to achieving quite significant reductions in CO2 emissions. Moving on to Sydney, and Sustainable Sydney 2030. A key driver of that were the thousands of people that they consulted on this, is that 97% said they wanted the council to do something urgent on climate change or global warming. So Sustainable Sydney 2030 was born. This represented the waterfall chart of all the different components that is needed to make up that 70% reductions in CO2 emissions. My advice to them at that point, because they asked me to help them out, so when I came over here to do a city tour, that's all I thought I was doing when I came over here, but I got cornered. And I essentially said, look, this is what you need to do. If you want to turn Sydney around quickly, you need to sort out your planning, use of planning for decentralised energy, and that's happening. You need a decentralised energy master plan. Because you haven't done anything, you have a golden opportunity to plan out the city for decentralised energy. And I don't just mean a theoretical plan, actually use your public land, buy up land if necessary, where the energy stations are going to go. I'm going to come on to a bit more detail in a minute. If you do that, which represents 70% of the problem, it provides you with infrastructure routes for other green infrastructure like recycled water, automated waste, and so on. Of course, the City of Sydney has got to show by doing. Key principle in both Woking and London, you can't get other people to do things that you want them to do unless you're prepared to do it yourself, so you had to have an aggressive projects to actually do. You've got some regulatory barriers over here that need removing, so that's state government and federal government are going to be targeted on that, are being targeted on that. A better building partnership and a process of establishing that with your large building owners here. We need a delivery agency like a climate change agency, and we need to assist others. And that's where Sydney's taken on the role of environmental leadership. And we are working not just with the big cities, but also the smaller local authorities, because it's important that people learn, lead by example.